Hello there. In this video, I'm going to talk about the normalization, what normalization exactly is and how does it take place. Normalization is basically nothing but removing redundant data in your database. Now we will go through, there is a process in normalization of the database, and that's called the first normal form, second normal form, third normal form, fourth normal form, and fifth normal form. However, we will be going only into the I will be going only into the process of first normal form, second normal form, and third normal form. The fourth and fifth normal form I would not be going because they are mostly for academic purpose, and mostly people use in the organization they only normalize the database from first, second, and third normal form. That being said, let's look at what normalization is. Now, in the first normal form, it contains atomic values. What does atomic value means? The atomic value means the data that is there in each column is further cannot be divisible. That's what it means. It is the smallest amount of data that each column can contain. It cannot be further be divided. Each column in the table represents a single attribute. What it means again that every column, there can be multiple columns in the table, and each column represents a single attribute. I'll come to the explanation further later if you do not understand that thing. And each column in the table. What is a table? Table is basically where the information is stored. The table exists under the relational database system. The table in the first normal form suffers from the data duplication, update performance, and integrity problems. Now, why does the table suffers? Because in the first normal form there is a lot of duplication of the data. So what basically happens is that you cannot update that data because a lot of data is updated. If you update a data, because there is a lot of duplication, it can create a problem, and it also create a update integrity problem because there are a lot of duplication of data. Now let's go and look at the Excel. If you see here, if you see the employee name, I have created this data as you can see. Now what I have here is that I have employee first name, employee last name, designation, address, mobile number, phone number, that's landline number, email address, education, skills, project start date, and project end date. Basically this is, if you look at this is the data that I have created. It is a fictitious data, not a real data. I have not taken it anywhere. It's just a fictitious data I have created to show you what really is happening. In the organization, there is a project taking place. There is a software development taking place, and so there are a lot of employees in that organization in the software industry. So the employee has a first name, last name, and the designation, so on. These are known as, each column, is known as the attributes. If you look at this thing, these are called attributes. Employee name, designation, and what is the smallest part? The atomic value. The smallest part is this one. This is the smallest part. James can be smallest part, Morgan can be smallest part, project manager is small. That's the atomic values. Now basically, if you are looking, what's happening is that I have just created one big table for the organization, that the data is actually how it represents in the organization. Now if you see, I have the employee name, first name, a designation, and if you see the address, I have put the address together, but the address is not, normally the address would not exist like that. The address should exist like, there should be address line 1, address line 2, there should be state, there should zip, there should be city, PIN number, telephone number, mobile number, email address, etc, etc, etc. Whatever it is, that's what the address would actually, they would be divisible further in the columns. But in this, actually what I've seen in a flat file, actually even in the straight file, their data may exist like that. may or may not. Okay, so I'm not going into that details now. So let's go, and then we have a mobile number and phone number and email address of the person. Then we have education, and you, as you can see, the education and skills of the project actually are comma separated. Okay, so if you see, this is another issue I will come with it to later. And if you see that there is a project, now there are multiple projects running, and every employee may be working on one or more projects. Project A is there, project B is there, project C is there, and people are working on many different projects. The project has a start date and the project has an end date. As you can see, every project has a start date and an end date. However, if you see, the projects are getting repeated again and again, and the start date and the end date is also getting repeated. If you see, I will show it to you. Just see the projects. If you see here, let me color it to make it very simpler. Let's say project A. This is again project A, and again I will show you the project A. Again, if you see, this is project A. Now what is happening basically is that this is redundant data. What does the redundant data means? It is the data that is getting repeated again and again. Okay, so what is happening is that, now let's go to the other side and see what's happening here. Because this is the same employee and it is the same name, this person is actually working as a data architect on two different projects. If you can see here, if you go down, if you see that he is working on the project A and project B, isn't it? So this person is basically working on project A and project B. If we, let's go to the now, this is what we are looking at. Again, if you see, Roger Android is actually a data architect and he is living here. Again, this data is getting repeated. If you see the address, the designation is getting repeated. The first name, last name, telephone number, mobile. When what we are seeing is there is a lot of redundant data that's going on. Suppose if we tomorrow, let's take here Christina. Christina is the developer. She is working only maybe on a single project. I will just change the color of it, or maybe I will put a border, outside border. What I'm seeing is that this Christina Rodriguez is a developer. Now suppose if I actually wanted to delete this person data because she is no more working on the project right now, on any project, what will happen if this is the flat file? The whole thing would get deleted. As you can see, the Christina Rodriguez developer would get deleted, and I would no more be able to have this information of her in my table or my database, because because she was not working on some project, because I wanted to delete her from the project, but she was no more working on that project, I would lose all the data of her name, information, and what designation and address, and all the things would get deleted. That's what we do not want. When I want to delete her from the project, only I should be able to delete that from the project, not her details. That's the big difference. Now, if I wanted to update it, Roger Android. So I will have to update many places, his address, his mobile number, his everything, all the details. So this is not the correct way how the data should be represented. This is the data getting repeated and it's a redundant data. Now, we further go and normalize the data. How do we normalize the data? Okay, let's move back to the PowerPoint. Now, what does it say? It says super key. Now, what's the super key? The key is to identify the row. Let's go back to the Excel. Now this data doesn't have any super key. What it means is that I cannot identify this row by any key. Okay, I need to identify each table with a key, one key that would be able to identify the whole row uniquely in the table. What is a candidate key? A candidate key may be, suppose if this James was my super key, or maybe it could not be because the James may be repeated many times. So I may add as Morgan as a candidate key. The first name and the last name becomes a candidate. So the first name I took as a super key, but it doesn't work. So I add one more to it. Now Morgan last name can be a can it make a unique key or super key? Yes. If yes, then it is a Morgan last name becomes a candidate key. Okay. And what's the primary key? A primary key is exactly the key that would be able to identify the row uniquely, and it is also basically when you create a primary key on the table, is automatically indexed by default on it. Let's move to the next slide. Now first normal form, what does it does? It removes the duplication and increases the granularity, which in turn reduces the complexity. Referential integrity is linking together primary key and the foreign key. What is referential integrity? Referential integrity is basically actually linking together the primary key and the foreign key. I will show it to you when it comes. If you have not seen the normalization process, or if you're not following the relational database, it may be find very difficult. But basically, if you know, then it is the primary key and the foreign key. Primary key uniquely identifies the row. I already said foreign key is placed in the child table to establish the relationship between the parent and child table. That being said, let's move to the words and the meaning used in the normalization. Until and unless you do not understand what the table means, if you look at the table in the dictionary, you will think, oh, that's some object with the 4 legs. No. That's not the table definition in relational database management system. In relational, it is called structure in relational database management system that contains the data. That's called a table. Rows. Rows are also called tuples in relational database systems or mathematical terms. They contains the information. Actually, what happens is that if you see, this is like a row. And you can consider this thing as whole thing as a big table which has an employee name, employee designation, and this is the row that is existing into it, and you can see the rows getting repeated and again. That's what it is. Columns. Also you can see also called the field or attribute stores the smallest information. As I already spoken to you, this is the smallest information, the column. That's the most atomic value of the data that is here. Of course, this will not be true because this is not the most atomic value, isn't it? Because it contains the state, the city, the PIN number, everything. I do not want. This is not supposed to be correct. However, we will try to rectify that problem as we move further. Okay, and let's go to the surrogate key. Now, what's surrogate key? Basically, what is happening is that there is more than, if I want to actually create a primary key on the Roger and the first name and the last name. If you see, Roger and Rod is getting repeated again and again. If I add a designation also, again it's getting repeated again and again. The moment I go, I cannot create a primary key on this if this was a table, because there is nothing to uniquely identify, though I am trying to add. And even if I add many keys, what will happen is the result will be that the key is very, very big. In order to get over this very big primary key that is coming to become a primary key or a super key, I would like to have a surrogate key. Surrogate key is nothing but an integer automatic increasing counter that's available in many relational databases like Oracle, Microsoft SQL Server, Sybase, and other relational database. Even in the Access. So, what's basically if I create surrogate key. Surrogate key is that every time I insert a record into the table, what's happening is that it actually is incrementing the record number by 1 and actually adding that data to before the, so this would become like 1, 2 and so on. So I would have 12 records. So that would become my surrogate key. Surrogate key. Okay, that can become my surrogate key. But let's see what the other thing is. There's the alternate key. Basically, if you see, there is why do we need the alternate key? Is normally never used for the primary key, or is never used for the integrity of the tables or in the database. What is used is mostly for the purpose of reporting. Suppose the management wants report only on the state, or maybe on the designation or something like that. So you can have a surrogate key on the, you can have the alternate key on the state. The state would be repeating CA for California. When this data would be divided, there would be state field or the state column that would be able to show only the state, and you can actually sort it out on the state, and you can create a report on the state. That is what is known as the alternate key. Now, what is key versus index? Now let's go back to the key versus. If you see, this is basically a key. A key is involved into the reference, is a primary key or a foreign key. It may be involved into the referential integrity or may not, but the one thing is very, very important is that the key is basically indexed. However, if you see the difference, index may not be necessarily be a key. It may be just an index. As I was already speaking to you, suppose if we created it on the state, the index, that's the index. So that's the difference between an index and a key. A key is an index. Key may also become an index, but the index may not necessarily be a key. First normal form allows you to create one-to-many relationship. That being said, we are done with the first normal form, and let's go to the, as you can see, this is what we are done. Now, to get through, I actually was able to look at the data and divide it into the multiple tables. Now, what I did has that if I have created 4 tables because I want to separate the data. So what's important, I have created is that employee. I'm going to create a one-to-many relationship. I'm going to make the data, put the data into the separate tables, and I'm going to move them in the data into the different tables, and I'm going to make the connection between them. That's called referential integrity, primary key and a foreign key. Okay. So what I've done is that I have created 4 tables. If you see, the primary employee is there. So this is the table. This is the definition of a table that is going to get created. So if you see the employee, employee ID, employee first name, last name, designation, address line 1, states. Now I have broken this address. If you see the address line 1, address line 2, state, city, PIN, country, mobile number, landline number, email address. And then let's go, and because we have multiple skills, this is called a multi-value dependency. On what it is? The multi-value dependency means there are many skills together existing in the column separated by a comma. It may actually exist on the employee ID because that skills belong to the particular person. Let's move further a little bit, and same thing with the certification. And then there is a project. The project, if you see, these were the skills and these were the multiple education qualification, this is skill. And now let's look at the project. Now I have a project with the project name, that are project ABCDEF, and then the project start date, project end date. That's what important to me. And then every employee there would be working with the project, isn't it? However, in this case I would not actually looking at the employee, so it is project ID and start date and end date. Okay, and now let's move to the Erwin. If you see in the Erwin, I already have actually created that table, that information. The information is employee project details. If you see here, this is the employee project detail. It is exactly the data that I am going to look at. Now what's happening is that employee first name, last name, designation, address, mobile number, landline, email address. This is all the same columns that I picked up from this Excel data, where the data was completely raw, without any information making any sense, much sense, if I want to retrieve an update. So that being said, let's move back again to the employees, and if you see here, this is what I have created from the Excel, whatever data was. What I wanted to do is I want to make change the relationship. So what I did is that, because I have actually created 4 tables, looking at it, employee, skills, certification and project, and I added the columns. Okay, now if you are never known to the, if you have not created Erwin, never used the Erwin, then I will come to it and show it to you how it's done. But let's see, this is how exactly it is. This is employee ID, last name, first name, address. Now address has been broken down into many parts of the address. One address line, state and city and pin, country. Now we have the skills. There is a skill ID and the skills. Now how does it happen? I will tell it to you. Basically, if you see the first column of the entity, if you are looking at the entity, it is here that is being drawn. Is the employee ID is the primary key, the skill ID is the primary key, and certification ID is the primary key. And we have a many to many relationship, because one employee may be working on many projects, and a project may have many employees working on it. So this makes it many to many relationship. How do we deal with the many to many relationship? Comes in the third normal form. For that thing, let's say I actually wanted to create repeat, and I will show you how to do it. So let's move to the entities, and I will show it to you how to do it, and the rest you can do it by yourself whenever you want to do. I will just show you the few as you can see, there is a stored display. This is called the stored display, and I have normalization. I am going to create one more. I am going to say normalization, new normalization, and I'm going to show how I've created that thing. New normalization, and let's see. If you see, basically it's everything has got copied, but I will just delete most of them. Sorry, I will just not delete that thing. What I will do is I will delete all the relationships, so that it can be very easy to explain. Now okay, now I have actually deleted the tables, deleted the relationship, and if you see, this is the table. I have the data that I've actually moved it to the 4 different tables, the same table. Now if you are thinking, how do I do it? Okay, here is the entity. You just put it, and you can say employees, okay, and because this is if you have a primary key, put it on the top, employee ID, and then we have a name, employee name, first name, last name. Just press and enter to move to the next column, and that's how you would be doing it. And if you really want to still look at it, data and define the data type, you can do it here, but I'm not going to go into that details right now because this is not related to the normalization process. So that's being said that this is my primary key because I've already defined it on the top. If I actually just remove that thing, you'll see that the employee ID has moved down. If I actually click it again, I again get into the primary key. However, I can move it from here by moving it down and moving it up. That's how you actually can do it. And that's being said, if you see here, this is also where you can do it, but I'm not here to actually explain you the Erwin. So that being said, I will delete it from here. So this is what actually I've created, and let's move into the how to establish a relationship. Now every employee, basically I'm creating to one-to-many relationship and trying to get the into my first normal form and the second normal form. So what I'm going to try to do is that I'm going to create a non-identifying relationship, and I'm going to click here. Just click here, and I will click here, and we have got a non-identifying relationship. Now if you see, what has happened is that I can move the employee ID foreign key a little bit up, because the employee ID basically depends upon the skill ID. We do not need actually this thing. So what's happening is that there would be skill 1, 2, 3, 4. There can be many skills for the employee, isn't it? And every employee would have the ID, and then the skill would be listed one by one. So similarly we can do it. There can be many skills. There's skill n number of skills, and the same thing we can do with the certification. And you can see that a certification is here, and we can actually move it. We will move this employee ID up again. One employee may have many certifications. So there is employee number 1, and employee number certification has Oracle certification. Again, employee number 1 has Microsoft certification. Employee number 1 has some management certification. Again, it may or may not. So let's say if there may be an employee who may not have any certification. So we can actually create a 0 to 1 or more relationship. So this is basically 0 to 1, or what is saying that the employee may have 0 or 1 certification. Employee may or may not have certification, isn't it? Okay, the same thing is for the skills. Employee may or may not have any skills. If it is a management, it may have only management certification, no skills at all. Like the skills may be related only to development of the software, like tools or the testing or something like that, or database administration, business analyst, project manager, all those things. Now let's move to now that we have established the relationship from one to many, let's move to the many to many relationship. This is many to many relationship, and because I know one employee can work on many project, and on one project many employees can work. So this is many to many relationship. So let's create a many to many relationship here. If you can see here, this is a little bit gone that side. I can bring it here, and I have got many to many relationship. One employee may work on many projects. One project may have many employees. That being said, we have established the many to many. This is actually what we have done in the first normal form. Basically, what what happens is that in the second normal form, only the static data is removed from. If it is not removed in the first normal form, it is removed from the. What is the static data? Let's say, example, if there was a a lot of products name, and there was always getting invoice getting created. So the product data is static because it changes, but it rarely changes because we add a new product. The product may have an invoice number or may have no invoice number because the product may or may not be sold depending upon that thing. So product becomes a static data. You have to separate the static data in the second normal form. That being said, as you can see, we have already are in the second normal form because we already separated the static data. Now what happens is that basically if you see, now we have the same type of relationship. Now this is exactly the same thing. Now that being said, I want to further go and put this thing into the third normal form. So what I have to, in the third normal form, I have to resolve the many-to-many relationships. How do I resolve the many-to-many relationship? So what I can do is that I can click on this Erwin and I can say this create association entity. What happens is that it will automatically create the association entity, which will allow us to break the relationship of many-to-many. That being done, there is a wizard that runs up and I will say next and many-to-many relationship and employees project. That's they have taken the part name from the employee and employee because the first table is employee, the other is a project. So let's go and say next and finish. Now what I have is that I have the relationship that has got broken into the employees and the projects. Now this is what it is. Now I have that being done. I now need to, suppose I were to say employee start date. You need to put some other details like employee start on the project. The employee may be working and it has to have a start date and end date. As you can see, just press an enter and we go to the employee end date. That is it, and we have normalized the database. Now we are in the third normal form, that we have broken the many-to-many relationship and we have entered the third normal form. That's it. That was it, what you saw. This is exactly, you can see it here also. As you can see, that is what normalization is about. That being said, and that's it. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.